Welcome back. So we're now going to have a different kind of story. Our next speaker is Kimberly Brenneman, who earned her PhD in developmental psychology from UCLA. Before that, she completed her undergraduate work in Spanish and psychology in Bucknell. Her current position, which she's been in for 2 weeks, is program officer for education at the Simons Foundation. Her grant-making focus, not surprisingly, is primarily mathematics. Prior to that, Kimberly was research faculty at Rutgers University, and there her work centered on ways to improve curricular and instructional practices to support science, technology, engineering, and mathematics learning in preschool classrooms. With Rochel and others, she offered preschool pathways to science, facilitating scientific ways of thinking, talking, doing, and understanding. So Kim has been involved in developing tools to assist teachers in assessing learning progress for math and science, and she was the principal investigator on a lot of research projects at Rutgers funded by the National Science Foundation and other foundations involving preschool curriculum development, professional development for teachers, and the creation of authentic homeschool connections around science, engineering, and math learning. Kim is also an advisor for Jim Henson Company's Sid the Science Kid, and she's the author of the blog The Learning Lab, Lab Explorations for Learning for the Curious Teacher for a couple of years. So I think we're going to hear some really great on-the-ground experience. Kim was Rochel's graduate student at UCLA and then her postdoc at Rutgers. They have been co-authors, PIs, and colleagues for many years since then. And she also wanted to mention that she's one of their top choices when they travel and require dog service for Tigger.
Yeah, I figured that sets me apart. Can you hear me? Is the lapel mic working?
No.
No? Hold it? Text support. Does this work? Does that sound?
Yeah, good.
Okay, that's good? Okay, great. Yes, I was going to say one of the things that definitely I think sets me apart from the other speakers today is that I spend a lot of time dog sitting for Tigger, which is absolutely one of the joys of having known Rochel and Randy. I love that dog. As Mary so kindly described, I have known Rochel and Randy, but especially Rochel, for 25 years this year. Exactly 25. This is how we met. You may not know, some of you may not know, that Rochel could have done something different with her life. When she chose psychology, she could have chose concert pianist. Did you know that? Yeah, some of you did, some of you didn't. This is a woman who had other options in her life, but she chose psychology, and thank goodness she did. For me, I also had other options in my life. I was one of the very best people to staff the information desk at Bucknell University. And that's where I was sitting when I met Rochel Gelman via telephone. Sitting, phone rings. I figured someone asking for the number of the campus theater, the number of one of the 3 pizzerias in Lewisburg. David, you're going to Lewisburg soon. Bertoni's is the one. Don't let anyone tell you the House of Pizza is better. It's not. So that's what I'm expecting. What's the number for Bertoni's Pizzeria? What I hear is this Kimberly? Yes. This is Rochel Gelman from UCLA. I'd like you to come work in my lab. Well, this was sort of shocking, first of all, because it wasn't a call for a pizzeria number. It's also shocking because I got into graduate school, and also shocking because I thought Rochel Gelman was still at Penn. How lucky can you get to apply to a graduate program, not even knowing you're going to end up working with Rochel? So pretty fortunate for me that that happened that way. A number of years later, 10 exactly, I think. We're working in sort of round numbers here. 10 years after that, I was here in New Jersey when Rochel and Randy moved to Rutgers. And I was very fortunate to get another telephone call from Rochel asking me to come and work in her lab. And if that first phone call changed my life, the second one transformed it. I'm excited to talk to you today about some of the work that Rochel and I have done together, some of the work that Rochel has done that's inspired others, and some of the work that Rochel has done with her students, many of whom are in this room. talk, as you heard, about early science and math education, and moved sort of from developmental psychology into translating basic research into educational applications. So I'm going to talk with you today about some of that work. You may have heard, it's hot news, hot topic right now, that early math and science matter for children's later achievement in school and in life. Math readiness scores at kindergarten entry, around kindergarten entry, predict achievement in upper grades. Not surprisingly, they predict achievement in mathematics. They also predict achievement in reading. And math scores at kindergarten entry do that at least as well and often better than reading readiness scores do. For science knowledge, we have similar results, although not replicated as often as those math results, suggesting that children's knowledge about the natural world and the social world at kindergarten entry predicts their achievement in late elementary for science, math, and reading. And again, we're seeing that relationship is stronger for real-world knowledge than it is for reading readiness scores. I'm a fan of literacy. I'm not suggesting that children should not be taught to read. I am suggesting, however, and the research is backing up, that we need to start paying much more attention to early math and early science than we currently do. These kinds of graphs are all over the place. This one is courtesy of my colleague across the river at the National Institute for Early Education Research, Steve Barnett. They did, and he and others did an analysis and just pulled these numbers out of some data from NCES, showing the gaps in mathematics readiness for children entering kindergarten for the first time. You see, and this is not going to be news to anybody who reads a newspaper, that non-Asian, non-white children tend to be behind in their kindergarten readiness for math. If you're in a family that's living below the poverty line, you're behind in kindergarten readiness compared to children whose families are at or above 200% of the federal poverty level. If your parent's highest level of education is less than a high school diploma, you're behind in your kindergarten readiness. I don't have the data on this graph, but the same gaps exist for children who are learning a home language other than English. They are also tend to be behind in their kindergarten readiness in mathematics. And as we've noted, that's going to play out in the future. So you see something like this, the children who start behind in their mathematics achievement scores, they don't catch up. Children, this is economic data, SES data. So the red line is the children whose families are in the upper quartile, and the blue line is children whose families are in the lower quartile. They don't tend to catch up. Another thing that's sobering is that children who are in the lowest SES groups, who are actually achieving pretty well in kindergarten, are much more likely to drop down by middle school than our children who are in higher SES groups and performing well. So we have some sobering data. It's not just those kids in the lowest quintiles and quartiles. However, you can see from a graph like this, again courtesy of Steve Barnett, that we have lost potential growth sort of across the SES spectrum. So it's not just that these kids are behind, they are, but we have lost potential growth for many children in our country. And those lines represent reading, math, and also that general knowledge that I was talking about as being really important and related to later achievement. Well, we have the promise of early childhood education. This is getting a lot of attention. The president is on board with this. We have bipartisan support for early childhood education. It's really something when you can bring together people as diverse as, say, Republicans and Democrats. In the state of New Jersey, we have done some pretty fantastic work for young children. I don't remember when Abbott versus Burke came into existence. I think it was late 90s, early 2000. A court decision that stated that children in the 30 poorest school districts in New Jersey had to have access to pre-kindergarten. They were going to get state-funded kindergarten. And these data are from early cohorts of children who were receiving state-funded pre-kindergarten. What you see is comparison between children in light purple who had 1 year of pre-kindergarten, darker purple children who had 2 years, compared to children who, matched peers who did not have pre-kindergarten at all. And we're looking at their achievement scores in language arts and literacy in 4th and 5th grade, math in 4th and 5th grade, and science in 4th grade. I think the numbers are pretty clear. Those bars for kids who got 2 years of pre-kindergarten, they're doing much better than their peers who did not, as late as 4th and 5th grade. We're continuing to follow those children into the future. So these are fairly recent data from 4th and 5th grade for those kids. So we really do have promise there. It's not all doom and gloom, but in case you were getting happy, we'll go back to doom and gloom a little bit. What's the state of math and science? So those data I just showed you are high-quality programs. Are they high-quality in math and science? Well, they're actually better than a lot. This is what you see sort of taking a look at the literature and what happens in math and science in typical Head Start classrooms, typical pre-kindergarten programs, typical child care situations. So 6-hour day, 58 seconds devoted to math. It's not enough, in case you were wondering. 40 hours of observation in 6 classrooms, not one planned math activity. So spontaneously, there might be a little rote counting. You might identify a square or a triangle, but that's about all that was happening in 40 hours of observation. The Erickson Institute reports that on a given day, they're observing teachers. About 21% of the teachers taught any math at all, whereas like literacy, 96%. Again, I'm a pretty big fan of literacy. I'm a pretty big fan of mathematics too, so we've got to get those numbers up. And again, you can read for yourselves in a full pre-kindergarten day, 3% time is spent on math, 1% on science. And in data that Rochel and I were part of here, one of the honor students in our lab, who's now doing a postdoc at Stanford, so she's done pretty well for herself. Irina Nafeld collected data showing that the science area and the sensory table area, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the pre-kindergarten classroom, but there's usually a table where there's water in it and sand in it, and mix those things together and you really get in there and you experience the world. Nobody's going there. And those are the places where children are having the opportunity to learn science. Their teachers don't go to those places either, and data are pretty clear that kids like to be where their teachers are. Pre-kindergarten, they still like being around their teachers. Or in a picture's worth 1,000 words, this is what a sensory table looks like in a typical pre-kindergarten classroom. You'll notice there are no children there enjoying themselves playing in the dirt or the mud or the sand or the water. It's a really good place for the teacher to put her lunch. It's a really good place to dry art projects, and you can hide toys underneath it when you need to. No wonder no one's going there. That's what it looks like. It is not a place that's inviting. It's not a place that makes you want to explore. Why is this? Why is there so little science and math happening? I probably could have polled you on this and you would have come up with the answers yourselves. Literacy and social emotional concerns take precedence. So for a lot of pre-kindergarten teachers, they will tell us, I need to work on literacy, I need to work on social emotional. If the kids aren't behaving or learning how to behave, I can't teach them anything. One of my good friends says, well, if you actually are giving them strong curriculum and experiences that they're enjoying, they probably will behave better too. In other words, don't wait till they're behaving to teach them. Teach them, give them interesting, exciting things to do, and maybe you won't have behavior trouble. Another thing, and this isn't surprising, we're scared of math and science, many of us, many adults. And preschool teachers, carers, are among those people. Many of them will say, I started teaching preschool so I wouldn't have to teach math and science. Okay? This is why I'm in the early years, so I have to do that. There's also really big theoretical debates in the field about play versus teacher instruction, as if these two things are dichotomous, as if you cannot have a teacher guiding sometimes and children playing, as if some guided experiences in the classroom don't provide children with ideas for their play. There's nothing like watching kids go pretend to be paleontologists to tell you that teaching them a little bit about what a paleontologist is and does is going to help make their play richer, make their play more interesting. But there are theoretical debates, and so you will have people say to you, I'm not going to teach them math and science, they should just play. I have a story. I was heading in for a medical procedure, and as you often do in a medical procedure, you are wearing a paper dress, and you're a little vulnerable because the paper dress is open everywhere. You don't want it to be open. And I'm sort of in this vulnerable position, and the nurse asked me, what do you do? I said, well, I work in early childhood education. I help teachers support children as math and science learners. And she looks and she goes, oh, can't they just play? And I thought, really? Here, in this position, I'm going to have this debate. So we actually had a conversation, and they said, you know, think about your kids. You have kids, what do? They count? Yeah, they like to count. Do they like to find shapes in the world? Sure, they like to do that. They like to get messy in mud and dirt and talk about that? Yeah, they do. All right, well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about looking at the science and math and what children already do and enhancing it. Oh, she thought maybe that was okay, which was good. Since she was sort of in charge of my health that day, I'm glad that I convinced her that what I did was all right. Another big issue that keeps children in these years from getting high-quality math and science learning experiences is that their teachers just aren't well prepared. That's really our fault for a number of reasons. It's our fault because as teacher educators, we're not giving them the right practical experiences. We're not giving them coursework in early childhood math and science. So how can they be expected to know what to do when they get around real children in a real classroom? That's part of it. That's if the people taking care of our children actually have a teaching credential or a BA in education. Many of them do not. So again, the chances of them being prepared to support children's math and science learners is quite low. We also pay people a ridiculously long amount of money, and you're not likely to draw people who are interested and able to support children in science and math when you pay them worse than a dog or more. But in my experience, and I think Rochel's experience, other people's experience to do this kind of work, many teachers really do want to do this. They're convinced by the kind of data I showed you, and they are convinced because they watch what kids do and what they get excited about, and they say, I want to do this, can you please help me? And that's the kind of work that I do, and that's the kind of work that many people in the country are doing now, where we are working on how to change the status quo. How do we get more science and math happening in classrooms? So we have many approaches to professional development for teachers, exciting approaches. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that today, but suffice to say that the professional development that we're doing and that's showing effects is intense. It has long duration. And it is very classroom-based. It's connected to classrooms. When you give teachers workshops that are out there one shot, it isn't going to work. It isn't going to change practice. We know that it requires taking time and linking the theories about children's learning that we're trying to teach teachers to what they do in a classroom every day, to the kinds of things that children are doing in their classrooms. We also, just to change the status quo, need to do a better job with assessment. Saying assessment and preschool together is often something that causes people to sort of shudder or start. By assessment, I really mean talking with teachers again about how to watch what children are doing, figure out what they know based on their behavior, and assess that formatively, and then think, what am I going to do next to help this child move along in his or her learning? So it's authentic assessment informing instruction. Again, I'm happy to talk about that more afterward. What I'd really like to focus on today are some of the tools, curricula, and interventions that are out there for children to learn, and some family engagement strategies and resources. And I'm going to talk about 2 cases. This will not surprise anyone. I've chosen some of Rochel's research as the starting point for the educational tools and interventions I'm going to discuss. So, 2 cases, a little bit on number research and something called Galmantics, which I'll describe, or actually the creator of Galmantics will describe for you. And that leads into a discussion of interactive e-storybooks and mathematics. We're also going to talk a bit about some early animacy work. Again, I'm focusing in on Rochel's work, some of the people in the room. There are many other people who have done animacy work, but we'll focus on a few studies that came out of Rochel's lab. Talk about preschool pathways to science, which I would have to talk about since that is the biggest thing that Rochel and I have ever done, and together, and what has transformed my life so much. And then talk a bit about Sid the Science Kit and another research project of mine called Readiness for Integrated Science and Engineering. So, I don't have to review these. I think probably everyone in the room knows this, and since I put up the book that I'm pretty sure has a picture of Adam on the front, am I right about that? So it's not just Rochel and Randy's book together, it's their child together, and then I was a little jealous because their child's in it, so I found a picture on the internet of Rochel with my child, who's now 6'2" and 17 years old, driving his own truck with a girlfriend, so yeah, he's aged a little. Rochel? Not at all. So based in these counting principles that we all know so well, and based in some work that Rochel did with Osnabrück. Osnabrück is here. This was your dissertation, right? I got that right? Yeah, close, led to it, part of it, led to it. Yes. So this idea of linking basic research to the classroom, my understanding is that this whole idea came out of something that was happening in a classroom, where you watched a teacher playing a game, sort of like the monkeys on the bed game, although it was John the baker, and he has donuts, and someone comes along with a penny and buys a donut, and then how many do you have left, and you're shouting out the answer, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let's talk about the idea that could use this to look at children's arithmetic thinking. Could you set up situations where children were predicting numbers after you would add to an existing number, and then check it by counting? Then could you do the reverse? Could you perhaps say, add 3 donuts to 5 donuts, have children predict how many donuts count, and then take 3 away and see if they were getting some sense of the inverse principle of adding and subtracting. So what they found, what was not found in this work with Rochel, is that children, even as young as 3, were getting the directionality of this correct. So if you started with 3 or 4, and you added a couple, and you said, how many now? They can't count, remember. They would give you numbers that were higher than the numbers started with. So they were in the right direction, oftentimes actually accurate, or off by only 1. So getting the sense that children are able to have a, sort of an informal sense of the inverse principle. What happened next, or what I'm going to talk about next, is an educational application of this work. I got into cahoots with Herb Ginsberg, who's provided me with some material for this talk. When I talked to him about wanting to situate a discussion of some of the educational tools we have for early math and science in Rochel's work, I knew he had done this. He calls it Galmantics as a maybe a bit of an homage to our featured honoree today. And Herb was kind enough, even though he was suffering a cold, it was very good of you, Herb, do the voiceover and explain Galmantics to you. Oops, I'm hoping I can make this work. This is like the one I didn't test with times. There. That's not working, is it? Wait, hold on just a second. Yeah, I got it.
We'll pick it up.
No, I don't. Oh. I will start this over. I'm not sure that actually worked.
Here is our computer. So the time we need to find out already,
Oops, that's too many. Try again.
well, this is our why we start to
Great work. There are 8 animals.
That's another you have
Great. That's right.
So now, we have to decide on this. Notice that I can't so we have 5, 4.
Let's check. There are 11 animals. 8 plus 3 equals 11.
So a crucial feature of this activity is that it learns child collaboration as the tool, lineup tool. Then at the end, with the context, the context of learn, you can see that there are 8, followed by 3, 11, and as these numerals appear, the corresponding context in the order, like all the activities, the original activities is making numerals meaningful by their connection with the real object. So notice that this has is effective and can be used in classrooms in many different ways.
So Galmantics, as Herb said, is able to be used in classrooms. You can imagine this kind of learning. Another nice feature of it is that you can go in as a teacher or a researcher and manipulate the numerosities involved, manipulate whether the lineup tool is there or not, and different kinds of things that allow you to adapt this for a child of different learning levels. Or, as a researcher, to kind of set up the situation to find out how children are thinking about different aspects of number and of addition and subtraction. Another kind of research, and you'll see a lot of names of people who are in this very room, along with Rochel. Using the number research to create a learning tool. Using animistic research to inform learning experiences in science. So, a number of years ago, Rochel, the stuff is here, started asking children questions about different kinds of objects in the world. Animate ones, inanimate ones. You know, again, we're sort of basing, you think about Piaget's approach to animacy and the findings that he had, and the idea that maybe children could actually reason more about animate and inanimate objects than the interpretations of Piaget that were out there would suggest. So they asked questions about, can a doll read? Can a doll walk? Can a rock do these things? Can a person do these things? What's inside of these things? Asking children to reason about something they weren't looking at, that wasn't right in front of them. Later, a little bit later, Chris Massey, in what I believe was her dissertation, am I right about that? Yeah. Had children look at photographs, these are just a couple examples, photographs of unfamiliar objects, and ask whether they have the capacity for self-propelled movement. Can this thing go up a hill or down a hill by itself? I see some of the Gelman Lab people laughing because they've probably seen these photos. Right? I didn't use the echidna. The echidna is the famous one. So we have a marmoset. So most probably 3- and 4-year-olds in Philadelphia at the time had probably not spent too much time with marmosets. And this creature here is an inanimate object. All the inanimate, not all of them, but a subset of the inanimate objects were chosen because they had features of animate objects. So this thing has legs, it has arms, it has eyes. It's the kinds of things. So asking children whether these things that looked animate could move up and down a hill by themselves, or these things that were animate, but you can't tell, it's not moving, it's not doing anything that would indicate that it's animate, and found that indeed children were quite good at sorting the world into things that could go uphill by themselves, downhill by themselves, based just on these static photos, these non-motion cues to animacy. Rochel and I, and now she's working with her graduate student Shuki Yang on similar questions about determining animacy from non-movement cues, we had a slightly different task and chose, again, photographs of objects, no motion happening here, or it looks like they're in the same kind of motion, that were very well matched on their sort of perceptual features, and just ask kids, which one would you find in a zoo? We set it up that they were sorting the photographs into the ones that I took at a zoo and the ones that I found in the store, and the photographs had gotten all mixed up. You know what we do with kids, us researchers, we're really very clumsy people. We drop things all the time, and then we need 3-year-olds to help us sort our lives out. I once had a child look at me and go, if I had nice pictures with this, like these, I would not drop them all over the floor. I'm like a preschooler. It took everything in me not to say kids. It's just a setup to get you doing what you do. We've never dropped them, not much. So children, even 3-year-olds, when you have a pair like this, adults say, yeah, those two are pretty darn similar. 3-year-olds were able, reliably, to separate the ones out that would be alive and living and that you would find at a zoo versus those that would not. So this doesn't directly become preschool pathways to science, but research like this informs the kind of learning experiences that children are offered when they are part of the preschool pathways to science classroom. Preschool pathways to science began at UCLA with Rochel and Gay McDonald at UCLA Early Care and Education. Again, a number of people in the room have worked on this. Osman has worked on this. Emerald Williams has worked on this. I'm not sure if any other preps people are here, but this became something that many people in Rochel's lab worked on, including myself. Preschool Pathways to Science is a science-centered planning framework. So it is not a set curriculum. It is not, here's what you do on Monday, here's your script. It is a way of thinking, a framework for teachers to plan plan learning experiences for the children in their classroom that are grounded often in basic research. So a lot of the preps learning experiences that children are offered do come out of that animacy research, and I'll give you an example, many examples. Perhaps this focus on the idea that children's learning experiences should be conceptually connected. You shouldn't grow beans on one day and cook something in a week from now and then roll some balls down a ramp. Those are all good things to do, but you should be doing lots of them, and you should be giving children the opportunity to work with a concept over time through lots of different learning experiences if you want to build deep knowledge. We've all heard the mile-wide, inch-deep description of how curriculum is in the upper grades. In preschool, as we've seen, you're not even getting the mile-wide usually, but if you're getting anything, that's what you're getting. Preps is anti-that. Preps is let's go deep on a concept with kids. Children are engaged in real science practices, and they use the real words for those practices. Okay, so we do talk to them about observation, prediction, checking your predictions. Again, this language that was used in Osman's work. We have children who pick that up very quickly. They're excited to use words, learn words. So we have a child who we had taught him observe in circle time. Later he's running around the classroom and he picks up a Lego and he says, "It is blue, it is a rectangle, I cannot observate anymore." They pick these words up, they pick these practices up, and they use them repeatedly in a preps classroom. We also emphasize documentation. Children have science notebooks and they record their observations about the world around them. Are they doing this perfectly? No. Are they writing a lot? No. But they're drawing, and they are focused on observation and carefully recording what they're observing. We'll see a few examples where they did some pretty nice work. So animacy. One of the preps learning experiences that we created based on animacy research links to this book. Anyone familiar with it? A couple people nodding. You are, yeah. Yeah. So Alexander and the Wind-Up Mouse. It's like Leo Leone read the literature on animacy, because every page allows you to talk with kids about those things we've been talking about. So it's a wind-up mouse versus a real mouse. And the real mouse wants to be a wind-up mouse because he's loved. The wind-up mouse is loved. The real mouse gets chased by a broom and the people squeal and hate when he's in the room. So it's all about the differences between these two objects. And you can ask kids lots of really rich questions, and they will show you that those animacy results in the literature are not flukes. The kids think this way. And a few examples, and boy, I have so many more slides on this, but what I did was take just a photocopy, don't tell, it's against copyright, photocopy of Alexander and a photocopy of Willie. So just those black and white. Okay, so think about this. These are representations of objects created two-dimensionally out of basically ripped paper, and I've just photocopied them, and I give those to 3- and 4-year-olds, and I say, which one's Alexander? And I'll say, which one's living? Just which one's Alexander? They know Alexander's the living mouse. Tell us why. And we're, in a lot of ways, replicating that literature. The children are attending to the differences between these two objects and doing a really fantastic job of describing how they know which one is Alexander. You know, that thing that's really a live mouse. I don't know how they do it, honestly. I know. We should know. We do know how they do it. It's an amazing thing to watch children. And I have done this in many, many classrooms. Here on campus, yes, but also in Head Start classrooms with children who are first-generation immigrant families. Also, state-funded preschool programs here in New Brunswick. So this is cutting across those risk groups that I was talking about at the beginning, and we get the same kinds of responses from these kids. I love, they're talking about this one moving its eye. I mean, we know that kids pay attention to eyes and animacy, right? But that's what I want to me. Yeah, the eye is a little off-center, so to her, it was moving, right? So they are really doing a fantastic job of separating these two out along the lines of their capacity for movement or not, or capacity for movement themselves versus someone winding the windy thing. We also asked them to predict what they find inside. I did reassure them we would not cut open the real mouse. One time I didn't do that, and the child stood up and said, "We can't cut it open. There will be blood everywhere." Which does show you that he knows what's inside of a real mouse. Rochel will tell you that they always say blood, bones, and food, right? And that's blood, bones, and food. That's what's inside. It's uncanny. It's always blood, bones, and food. And I don't think I have a large digestion system. Not food, but a large digestion system, one child told me, would be inside a living mouse. In a non-living mouse, electricity and wires everywhere, holes and big and little. The key, it's empty, there are little germs and wires. So they really are doing a pretty good job of separating out what they find inside. So let's find out. As I said, we're not going to cut open any living things, but I'll show you some video from a classroom in Boston where they're opening up a window.
James getting in the car with his hands again.
So they were using them kind of without me. And I said, stop, I need to record this. So I'd like to share with you some of their descriptions of their changes in their own teaching by being involved in the professional development that allows them to create these kind of learning experiences for their kids, but also their descriptions of the children's thinking. So these are teachers who are teaching in Boston. These teachers are in East Boston, so most of the families are from Central America, first-generation immigrants. Almost every child learning a home language other than English, Spanish in this case. We also have a group of teachers who are from Chinatown in Boston, and their families are also immigrants, but of course they're learning Mandarin or Cantonese in their homes. So Diane and Heidi talking about some of the children's experiences and learning from these Animistic experiences.
So one day, we shut staff, so I had to send some of my friends to science classroom, and Johnny was one of them. And Legos? Yeah, the other thing with Legos. And he was a gear inside Lego. It was out of he knew it, and we had a big bucket of Legos. There's this one gear.
So the child hadn't learned the word gear quite yet, but from that teacher let them open up all kinds of things in the room, including the clock, they found he learned about gears, recognized one in the classroom, recognized it wasn't in the right place. So he's not doing that just on perception, the difference between a Lego and gear. He's doing that because he's had this learning experience where he's had the opportunity to open up the clock. A little bit more from them. The boingy thing.
Separating the pins. I remember when we were so literally just having it open, running, and they saw which was the which was actually the spring, and they called it the boiling. So they all learned that it's actually the boiling, plus I was trying to get it open. And then children noticed, so that got a whole study of spiders, snakes, snails, my ear. Another student here, I was seeing a key with like even more. The keys, taking pictures, talking about the feelings, the children are really bonding with other people, with their homes, with their dogs, with their elevators. The children enjoy the environment. It's wonderful.
So that finding that spiral, that boingy thing, that spring inside of the wind-up toy inspired, as you heard, studies of spirals. We talked about Fibonacci here, didn't we, today already, right? So these kids are starting to work on some of this language, some of these things in the world around them that they probably wouldn't be getting otherwise in their homes. This is journals. I told you we had some documentation of what children are learning. So we have the date stamps, which is a very important part of a journal, science journal. Date your work. If I've learned nothing from Rochel, I've learned date your work. And when I forget, I'm always a little ashamed. I hope that she'll never find out. I just ratted myself out. So the children have learned to date stamp their work. And this child is writing her dates out. And they've been very excited about the spiral, as you'll see there on the left. This child described the spiral as it goes around and around and it gets all dizzy. That was her description of what she had drawn and what a spiral was. So in the classrooms, children are getting these rich experiences with something like Herb's computer-based games based in early number work, and in the classroom they're getting, in a preps classroom, they're getting learning experiences around early science, which also supports early math learning. But we also know how important it is to remember that children are out of school more than they're in it, and how important it is for children to have consistency in experiences in their work. So if we can link the home to the school in effective ways, children will be getting learning experiences in both of those places that cohere. Children will be able to go back and forth between those worlds and talk about what they're learning in each place. Generally speaking, we think about family engagement in schools going unidirectionally from the school to the home. Hey, here's what we're doing in school today. Here's your homework. Here's your worksheet to do at home with your parents. Hey, parents, do this at home to help your children learn at school. I'm going to talk at the end a little bit about a bidirectional approach that we're taking in the Boston project that I've described. Before I get to that, though, I want to talk a bit about media. As Rochel mentioned, I worked on Civic Science Kid pretty extensively. She was an advisor on that as well. And I think media is a particularly rich place for parents to engage with children and for us to engage parents who might otherwise be a little bit scared about math and science because they're no different from preschool teachers. Many parents are also insecure in their abilities to support their children as math and science learners. So media offers a friendlier way, I think, to engage parents and families. So following my two sort of case studies here with early number and Gelman, I'd like to describe, and Herb's here so he can tell you more at the break, about what he's working on right now. A really exciting suite of tools that involves an interactive e-book, or a set of these, but for right now we have one. I'll show you a little clip of it. An interactive e-book for children that they can read themselves or can be read to them by the computer, can be read by a parent. They engage with mathematical concepts in these books, and there will be, accompanying these books eventually, a suite of games, sort of like Gelmantic's game that you saw, that children can then go play. So it links to the ebook they just read. The suite of games also will provide parents and teachers with data about how children are interacting with the concepts in the games, how accurate they are, how long they're playing, whether maybe you should support the child in a particular way, so you'll get some reporting on how children are playing the games. Also have the opportunity for parents to click on some videos of other parents or teachers reading those books with children, so you get a model for how to talk with your kid about math. I mean, like we said, parents are a little scared of this, and in fact, high anxiety parents, Susan Levine just reported SRCD that high anxiety parents around math actually do more harm than good when they try to help their children with homework. So if we can create, they do. The kids whose parents were high anxiety only gained half as much in math as the kids whose parents were not high anxiety in math when they were getting help with homework. So one thing we want to do is help parents be less anxious so that when they're helping their children, they're not harming them. So having something like this where you can go and look and see a model of how to interact. And then we're also going to have, I think you told me that you're going to have some tools where parents can click and see you working with a child talking, Herb talking with a child around a concept so that it's learn something about the development of that concept in children's thinking. So a real friendly, rich learning experience for kids, but also for the parents and teachers. Let me just show you a clip of this.
You're going to learn learn if you learn to eat. What is going to be the cool? What do you call it? You don't want to see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 7 good counting. Wait! There's more coming! 5, 6, 7. We need to find the third one. And you guys boxed up and ready to go.
They box up lots of things: drums, tambourines, right? Kazoos. Check it out. It's on Speakaboos. There's an app, and you can download the whole book for free. It's quite lovely. The kazoos drop out real fast, so you have to supersize them to figure out where they go. This, of course, you have to add to figure out which box to choose for your ukuleles. And it starts off a little easier, I think, with just sort of basic counting to get your cardinal value, to know which box to choose. So that's the very first, Monster Music Factory is the very first in this suite of ebooks and related learning tools that's being developed. So the Science Kit, similarly, is, again, a learning tool for kids that's also a learning tool for parents. We purposely developed SID to be something friendly for parents, that it would act as a model. So if you've watched the show, and I don't know if any of you have, it starts with Sid in his bedroom coming up with a big question for the day. And As we talked about this idea of following learning throughout, connecting learning experiences and making sure it's not a one-shot deal. The whole day coheres around this question or concept, and in this case, it's sort of an animistic question, how do roly-polies move? It's also a science tools question because we find out you can look and see very closely in a tiny object if you use a magnifying glass. So Sid is wondering how his roly-polies, Ruby and Glenn, how they move around. And he goes and asks his mother. So you can see a model of a mother speaking to her child about science, and dad's in the background, and he also is interacting. So they look up roly-polies on the internet, and they're doing some research to try to find out. And she sends him off on his day, always with the idea that he should find out more at school. So Sid goes and he interviews his friends about what they know about how things move. So he does the Sid survey. So again, we get some documentation and some questioning. He talks with his teacher and the other students about how roly-polies move in their sort of morning meeting, small group time. And then they move into the Super Fab Lab. And at the Super Fab Lab, they find out about this really cool science tool that makes things look bigger, so you can see how the roly-polies move. You can find out. Because they had some hypotheses about how roly-polies move. Maybe they roll, because they're called roly-polies. Maybe they have 1 million legs, maybe they have just a few legs. So they're looking to see, and you'll notice our science journal is right there. They're always documenting as well, just like the kids do in preps. So the whole show is centered on the idea that children have exciting science ideas, and we as adults can support them. It provides a model for teachers and adults to use with children. I have to say, nothing else in my professional career has ever gotten me anywhere close to the attention that being involved with this has gotten me. Many adults who come up and say, not just that their kids love the show and learn a lot from it, but that their husbands love the show and learn a lot from it. That they themselves have. I've gotten my picture taken with people because I worked on Sid. I'm not sure why, I don't exude Sidness, but people like, nothing has gotten me this much attention, and it really is, as often as not, parents or adults saying, I learned something, my husband learned something. I was on a plane, and I talked, a man saw I was working, and he saw that I had Sid, and he said, that's a great show. And I said, oh, thank you, I actually worked on it. And he said, oh, my wife loved that show when she was on maternity leave. And I said, well, that's great. And he said, are you here with your kids? Yeah, he has 3-year-old. So I took the DVD up when I was finished working on my talk, and I gave it to him. And he tugs at his wife and goes, that's the lady who works on Sid. And she said, oh, I hated when maternity leave ended. I couldn't watch it anymore. I mean, really. So adults are watching it, and that was really one of the goals, was to be a support for families and teachers so that they could support their children in authentic and rich science learning experiences. Finally, and this is to kind of bring me to a conclusion, as I said, I'm really interested in, and this is becoming more attention is being paid to the idea that it's not just that we need to get families at risk, up to speed on what happens in school, but we really, as schools, as researchers, need to look at what families already do, what's happening in children's communities and homes that we can build on in the classroom. So a bidirectional idea, the idea that every family has a fund of knowledge that they bring. They have something to offer their children, and they have something to offer the school. So for example, in our group in Boston, we have people who are construction workers, and they can come in and talk to children about the block structures that they're making in the classroom. They can be part of that. We can build on what they know and can do. So it's a different idea about these families, not just that they are at risk, but that they bring a fund of knowledge and that they have something to offer their children in the school. And we believe that by building curriculum that attaches itself to what children are knowing and learning outside of school, and at the same time talking with parents about what we're doing in school, that we are going to be able to, we hope, ameliorate some of these risks for children. So this brings us back to Alexander. This lovely little girl is observing bamboo very closely. So this is in Chinatown. Bamboo is a very important part of good luck. And this teacher had bamboo in her classroom, and the children were interested in it. They were making close observations of this living thing. And then they decided to make their own models of this living thing, their own, the version of the wind-up toy, right? The fake bamboo. So they are creating out of recyclable objects, bamboo. They are working on, the teacher quite purposely only gave them blue and yellow, and they had to figure out how to problem solve that to get something that would look, you're being very careful about it looking like the bamboo. They came up against a problem as they were doing this. They were running into problems with stability. They had learned about stability because they had very rich block building learning experiences. And they were talking about stability. They were trying to figure out how to make it stable. They used a lot of tape. Preschool children love tape. Really, if you have preschoolers in your life, forget buying them expensive presents, buy them tape. They love it. They spent a lot of time working, and I think you'll agree that the models they created are pretty marvelous. And they really do look very much like the bamboo we saw in the beginning. They're thinking creatively and they're engineering solutions as they create their own models of living things that they've observed. So, to conclude, I guess, what I've talked about a lot, sort of connection among the people in this room who've created knowledge. Based on our basic research, we've created a ton of knowledge that can be used to create learning tools for children in science and math. We talked about the connections, the importance of children having lots of opportunities to think about a particular concept and to work with particular skills, math and science skills over time. And we've talked about connections between classroom and home and children. Are we there yet? Are we there yet as far as figuring out how to lessen the achievement gap between sort of the haves and have-nots in our society? No, we aren't there yet. But we have a lot of reason to hope because there's increasing awareness of the power of early STEM to impact learning outcomes. We are getting more and more knowledge about how this happens, and that is exciting. And as I said, politically, people are starting to pay attention to that as well, which is also exciting. We have many exciting research-based interventions, two of which I've talked about, PEPS and the work that Kurt's doing, that are now being researched. So the first step is basing your intervention in research. The second step is actually researching the intervention and making sure that it works. Okay, so we're getting to that point now, and we're starting to get those kinds of outcomes for early math and science interventions. And I think we can also safely say that we are much further along than we have been if Rochel Gelman had become a concert pianist. So I am very glad that she's not. Thank you.
Thank you. As a provost at a major all-American university, it's very important for me to see the excellence of mind through our research translated into something that we can give to society. So I really appreciate this talk. Thank you very much. Let's have a few questions before we break for lunch. Questions?
Oh, sure. You tell them they could go eat if they have any questions?
It's a party. We don't want to.
Yes.
Hi, I have a question about two of your early slides. You showed us one slide where kids who had 2 years of preschool did way better than kids with 1 year of preschool in later life. But then you showed us that in preschool, they're only giving 1 minute a day or something. So how did 2 years of 1 minute
Right.
so much better?
That's right. One thing is that those New Jersey slides, New Jersey is awesome. We work real hard in early childhood in New Jersey. So,
So that wasn't the 1 minute people.
no, that's not no, in New Jersey, but to be honest with you, that's early data from the New Jersey State Pre-K program, and it's pretty clear that it's only getting better. So those numbers are probably underestimating where the kids who are in a New Jersey state-funded preschool program now are going to end up being an achievement down the road compared to kids who aren't in those programs. The math especially, they've been working on a lot in New Jersey and improving it. So, right, so the data that you saw there from classrooms, I think the Farron data is out of somewhere in Nashville, classrooms in Nashville, right? We have some of our data here in Brunswick, actually, that is not going to the science table. The Erickson data would be coming out to Chicago and probably Head Starts. So different parts across different
Thank you,
places.
that's back.
Yeah.
New Jersey is under law. I think it's 201 or 202 if I'm sorry. Abbott districts are 34 districts. And the state is required to provide preschool, quality preschool education. And it was pretty good when we got in. And they had people who were experts going to visit the classrooms. But the really interesting phenomenon was, as they saw what we were doing, it's contagious. I mean, once you see kids do these things, then they start to up what they think they should do. And so I think part of the reason it's getting better is that they were present as we were apparently outperforming them to their embarrassment. We got called in by the superintendent and saying, "What are you doing?" You know? So it's clearly an important legal decision.
And I mean, many states are, have state-funded preschool programs, and the quality varies quite a bit. But it is absolutely the case that it takes time. This isn't easy. You don't just say, "Hey, let's do math and science," and suddenly it's happening. It's expensive. We have some good methods, but they take a long time. And flavor of the month in education. If you're not seeing the result like that, move on to something else. So luckily, we're starting to get the data that are going to help us to convince people that we need to invest in early STEM. But yeah, we've definitely had the case with preps and the work we're doing in Boston, where other people are noticing. So the Head Starts we work with in Boston, it's not just preps that's in those classrooms, but I'm one of the people helping to co-develop the curriculum there. So there is a lot of preps-inspired work going on there. And so they're in Head Start, and they were getting their federal renewal. And the people who were in those classrooms were noticing that something of a very different sort was happening there than was happening in the classroom next door that's not involved in the program. So it is, I think, a lot of times the pieces showing people what's happening in those classrooms is a good way to start to build the will we need to do the hard work of helping to train teachers, to do the hard work of engaging families, not those ways.
I should say it took 20 years before I was willing to print. It really had to go out of a fancy neighborhood into downtown New Brunswick. And then we started.
And I got to tell you, I mean, just so much of what happened in the Rutgers preschool and so on, we saw it replicating, the kids talking and thinking the same way as the kids in the university preschool were talking and thinking. And you're onto something. It's exciting. Like I said, those lists of what kids are describing about the insides and outsides of it, they're no different no matter where you are. Now, I will say the large digestive system did come with Rutgers.
Let's have a couple more questions. It is technically a little past time, but it's just us. And one's on your own, so let's have a few more questions.
Yes. Anybody?
So in the beginning, I understand how you were mentioning that there was only 58 seconds of early math, but you can quantify that, right? You can talk about when you're talking about number of words, or they're counting, or they're doing something. But then you also presented data to suggest that there was really little work being done in early science. And you talked about the sensory table.
Yeah.
But then all of this research, the interventions that you talked about, have nothing to do with sensory table. So how do we know that there wasn't science research or science education going on in terms of reading books, art projects, and other things along those lines? So I guess one question is, are you certain that the science was just constrained to the sensory table, or was there perhaps more science going on? But what maybe distinguishes the PREPS program from these other natural science, whatever happens in the classroom, is more the continuity?
Well, so the data that we had about sensory tables and science tables, we really were just watching each area of the classroom. So a preschool classroom is set up with a dramatic play area, and an art area, and a library area, and this kind of thing. So we were looking at where kids were and where teachers were, so that was sort of a, who's going where during free time. So that wasn't really about the quality of anything that was happening there, just whether someone was there at all. We actually did an intervention, which Irina did an intervention where in whole group time she just sort of introduced kids to the balance scale. Hey, here's what it is, here's what it does. And we see huge differences then in kids going to the sensory, into the science area. All we did was we called it marketing the science area. We taught them a little bit about it, and then they went there. And the difference was huge compared to control classrooms. No one ever touched the balance scale before she just introduced it to them. So it's sitting there in this classroom. You think, oh, with the materials out, everything's good. Guess what? Nobody touches it. It's pretty hard to learn what it does and how it works if you never interact with it. So after her intervention, the kids were going over and interacting. Now, was it the case that they were balanced, working with the mathematics and the balance scale? Always no. Sometimes they were using the bucket as a cooking pot and the magnifying glass as a stirrer, but at least they were interacting. That's the first step, we think. So as far as the quality of what we're counting as science in a classroom, one of the studies that I didn't really talk about too much, they were looking more at what teachers were teaching to children, and you're similarly getting very low levels of anything that's related to science. And the quality, as I said, of that tends to be similar to math, very shallow, not deep. Now with preps, we haven't done the full-scale study where we would really control, in a controlled way, compare what's happening in a preps classroom, how kids are changing their science readiness, how they're changing their language readiness, and so on, compared to comparison classrooms. What we have done are smaller scale studies on particular learning units that we created as part of preps, and how that changes, and we have seen changes in kids' content knowledge and changes in children's ability to think about an experiment. But we haven't done that big scale. With the Boston project that I described, we are in the third year of an NSF grant, so we're doing the data collection now to see comparisons between kids who've been involved in that perhaps inspired, I would say, science and engineering curriculum versus the kids who have not. So we'll have some data on this.
Can I add to this?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm going to say no to you.
Why not? You're the one who's doing this. Both in this program, in our science at the ESL 1 grade, we have mini experiments where we pre-test, there's a teaching unit, and a post-test of each individual child, as well as then what happens in the classroom. So we're looking at areas that aren't being used and they get used, but is that because the kids know more or just because it's been drawn to their attention? And we see that they actually know more, but they also all of a sudden are overwhelming the science. Like the science table got to be too small.
Yeah.
So they had to make it bigger.
Yeah, they have rules in a lot of preschool classrooms about how many
know
kids
something, see they're drawing zero. Now that hasn't been proven, but teachers do tend to follow what the kids are. So there's many things in between, and I have to argue that it really is the best way to do evaluation of education and implementation. For the following reason, it's absolutely impossible to do a clinical trial. So when you start out thinking you're doing a clinical trial, you shouldn't be funded because it's impossible to have a constant variable difference. Teachers leave, the worst is your principal leaves, and they don't like it. You lose your control group because they start talking to each other at meetings and hear that their kids are doing better. So you have to embed learning experiences that are evaluative, but not, quote, tests, right? Because you want to do it online. So in the ESL program, after every organized unit, there was a pre-test and a post-test of all the vocabulary for each of the units. But then there's an organized test where the kids had to write up to 10 sentences about the unit. And that turned out to be our data. The syntax has changed, the vocabulary has changed, and the spontaneous kind of thing. And they got an A if they wrote something, and they got an F if they didn't write anything.
And these were ELD, right?
Sorry?
English language learner.
Oh, there?
Yeah.
They were writing in English. Yeah, they had to write in English.
No, but I'm saying they were English.
Oh, they were all,
ELD.
I'm sorry, yeah, they're all in ESL 2.
Oh.
The management is not an advantage. They weren't teaching science in the 9th grade, so these kids were stuck in this boring environment. And apparently, that's what they liked best about it, was that all of a sudden there's something they could learn. And in this case, not only were we looking at the kinds of things we talked about, we did check to see if their ESL scores went up. There was no loss. And whether they went on to the next grade. I mean, the whole point here was to make it possible to put them into the 10th grade math and science. And most of them did. They did above it as well. And even if only 15% continued, that would have been more than 0.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge equity issue, right? I mean, unfortunately, it's an equity issue. What you're talking about is when you keep children out of science and math classes until they're at a certain level of English proficiency, you block them out of getting into
In
college.
California,
Yeah.
one of the rules that we have never take enough science to go on to one of the good universities. Because there were requirements for X number of science courses. It was their starting leg. They couldn't get there.
Yeah.
And then science, it's easy. You can use, stuff from, go out and buy stuff in the supermarket. It doesn't have to be expensive. But there is this one funny thing that I think you're seeing too. Is as kids start to get, the kids are excited. In fact, we had to keep a bus waiting for them to do after school science experiments so they could go back over 2 passes home. And I'm going to stop. Okay. Just turns out, I mean, we published that too. We also videotaped all the lessons. We had a great teacher, George. And now we have massive pre-test, post-test conceptual things that we haven't analyzed yet. But we're in the middle now of analyzing the pre-tests of Japanese students. Oh, there were 41 languages. It made it very easy to have the science teams all speak a different language. And then we rotated who had what. Does that help?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a huge issue in preschool because more that 50% of the kids in our funded programs in preschool are speaking a home language other than English. And that language status has been treated, I think, sort of as a nuisance variable in a lot of our research. It isn't a nuisance, it's half our kids, we've got to figure it out. So we've got some work to do, a lot of work to do in the field and how we support our learners. But one thing that's pretty clear is that we can do a lot for them by giving them rich science and math learning experiences, making sure that they are getting those to the extent possible in their home language and in English, so we aren't helping them to lose their home language. We really don't want to do that, and we know the benefits of bilingualism. So what can we do to create situations, educational situations in which children are able to continue to learn their home language, learn academic language in their home language at the same time that they're learning English?
Why don't we stop here? This conversation obviously is very rich and could go on all afternoon right on this topic. How about if we continue the conversation over lunch? But before I let you go, let me ask Gretchen to tell us which direction to walk in when you leave the building.
Okay, so when you exit the main lobby doors here, you're going to turn left. The first building that you come to on your left is the Student Center. That's where you can find food, and there's 2 areas in that building where you can eat. If you enter in the very first doorway that you come to in the Student Center and walk down a long hallway, you'll come to a food court that has a variety of fast food areas. So that's one option. The other option is don't go in that first doorway. Stay outside and keep walking along the edge of the building and enter the very last door that you can enter into that building. There's several steps that you walk up to that last door, and then When you enter in that entrance, you will come to the faculty cafeteria, which is, more obviously a cafeteria type place to eat. So those are your two options.
Let's give Kim another round of applause.